Wake up and smell the coffee, Mr. LaRusso.
Extreme situations require extreme measures.
Yo guys, back to Cobra Karate. Welcome back to a brand new video. And guys, today we're talking about the rise arc of Johnny Lawrence in Cobra Kai Season 6, Part 3. If you guys don't know, I made about a 20 to 30 minute video about the failed arc of Johnny Lawrence, which was going over Part 1 and Part 2. And in that video, the arc wasn't just a mess. And I think I made it clear in the video, there's nothing they can do to save his arc in Part 3, which is why I made it now. Kind of making a bigger point that the arc was so bad, there's nothing they can do. Now, although I do think that is true, because once you start an arc, there needs to be a start, middle, and finish. So even though his arc was good in Part 3, I don't think the complete arc in Season 6 was good. But I really do want to just focus on Part 3 and how amazing his arc was, and how they truly redeemed this character in the last episodes, and how we will remember Johnny Lawrence. These last 5 episodes gave one of the best 5 episodes of Johnny Lawrence we've ever seen, and I think he will be remembered as one of the greatest TV show characters of all time with how they ended his character. And yes, Johnny in Part 1 and Part 2, it was a mess, and you guys can go check that out if you want to. But I don't think I'm necessarily going to go in depth on that since I already made a video on it. So I think I'm just going to say overall about Part 3, and that's about it. Because yes, in Season 6, it was awful. But what is Cobra Kai about? Redemption. And that's what they did to Johnny. They ended his character perfectly. Gave him a perfect arc for Part 3. Now, sure, arcs are not just things that are just split up in small parts or season. It's a full story with a start, middle, and end. I think it's best for Chris from Sopranos to describe what an arc is.
It says in these movie writing books that every character has an arc. You understand? Like everybody starts out somewheres, and then they do something gets done to them, it changes their life. That's called their arc. Where's my arc?
Something changes them. Change. In Season 6, he just went backward in his old ways of rambling, getting mad, and everything, and it was all for no reason. So not only did he changed for no reason, and accomplished nothing. And it was just bad. And you can make all the case that much has changed for Johnny to start his new journey in Season 6. And you can even make the case that, nothing's really changed from Part 1 and Part 3 to make him act completely different. And that is true. How he acts in Part 2 and Part 3 are really different, and really nothing changes to get him to that place. And I think overall in the complete story that is bad, because you can't just skip this stuff. You got to give reasons why they feel this way and why they supposedly change how they feel in sync. So I want to get that out of the way because I think it's a big lingering effect in the part, but I really want to focus Part 3 just focusing on it individually and how it follows from past seasons and not just Season 6. So with all that being said, I think let's get right into this with episode 11 of Johnny Lawrence. We start off, it's about a month after the Saikai Taikai, with it ending tragically, and we see him just working with Daniel, and you can see how bleak his life feels to him without karate. Since his life before, it was truly nothing. He was a loser. And yes, karate got him his wife, 2 sons, friends, and a new outlook on life, and a soon-to-be baby. So it's very hard to him separate those two things, because his redemption was made and because of karate. And he got the rewards of his redemptions in his life, but that came from karate. So now living with those rewards without karate is very hard for him. And when Daniel says the Saikai Taikai is back on, he is eager to do it, and not just for himself, but for his son Robbie to get him better life opportunities with a win. But Daniel doesn't want to. With Guan's death, it's very hard for him living and just living in general, and despite even going back to karate. Now, what does Johnny do here? If it was Part 1 or Part 2, he would probably crash out, be very emotional, acting on an impulse. He'd probably blow up in Daniel's face, because he clearly did not care about Daniel's feelings in Part 1 and Part 2, despite his growth in Season 5, and nothing has changed. But no, he accepts it. Yes, he is frustrated, and we can see that when he's talking to Carmen, but he understands and values Daniel's choice and feelings, something we do not see from the past. Now, why the change? I don't know. But once again, we're appreciating this part despite his arc and plot holes leading up to it. And then after Terry Silver takes him on that ride and trying to get him back into karate to talk over it all, he brings Silver to Daniel's house. Now, yes, that's not the smartest thing to do, but I think overall he had good intentions. Silver leaves and says his piece, Johnny makes it very clear to Daniel that this choice is up to him and he can do what he wants and he is fine and he'll live with any answer. This is the Johnny we've been waiting to see. The Johnny we started seeing to grow from season 1 to season 5. When Daniel lashed out on him in season 5, he calmed him down. Not whatever was in part 1 and part 2, and I'm so glad they showed this. Because karate means more than anything to him. But his ability to let it go and work for Daniel for the rest of his life, maybe even putting Robbie in future's risk, all for Daniel's choice and what he's going through emotionally with his death, is a side of Johnny that was the complete opposite of what he was just a couple episodes ago. And since we've seen him slowly grow into this outside of part 1 and part 2, it truly shows the beauty of how far he's came. And when Daniel says yes and it's back on, it's go time. And then we get to episode 12, and this episode is another great just arc of Johnny, and it starts off with Yaya bringing up God, and how Johnny and Carmen are having a baby before marriage, which in Christianity and Catholicism, it is a sin. Now, I don't think it's fair to say Johnny is the most religious type, and we never really seen him talk or even state he even believes in God, but instead of brushing it aside, he goes to his friend Bobby looking to confess and make these things right his wrongs, basically. Now this shows one or two things. Either he truly does feel a connection to God and wants to right a wrong, or he respects Yaya and her culture and family enough to do so. Either way, or maybe even both, it shows a side of Johnny we never seen before, and a side of the show we never seen before, bringing up God and religion. And I myself am a Christian, and I think it's very beautiful to see, and I don't think you even need to be a Christian to see the beauty in this, because it puts Johnny in a vulnerable situation where he is not forced to be in. He puts himself in there and accepts and acknowledges something he did wrong and trying to make it right. And it shows that Johnny is more than a funny, cheesy, crazy sensei they've shown for most of season 6. It shows he truly does care about his baby, about Carmen, and their family. Later on, we see Johnny looking to propose to Carmen, and although it doesn't go perfectly for going into labor, it shows the heart of the relationship. It's not about the flashy side and doing what's, I guess, appropriate and doing what's the most common thing. It's about the love. And it shows so much about Carmen, it shows so much about Johnny, with them getting married right there at the hospital, then soon having his daughter, naming it after Laura, his mother, which is something we can come back to later. Now, we saw him fail with Robbie, and when Miguel came into his life in season 1, that was his redemption as a father, to teach Miguel the things he wished he could have done for Robbie. And then before long, he became a father to Robbie and wrote those wrongs. And now here he is, all these seasons later, with his 2 sons, looking at his new daughter. And it's just so beautiful what Johnny has grown to be and what decisions he made to do. And it was just a beautiful moment. The music, the acting, everything was perfect in this scene. Now on to episode 13, which is by far my favorite episode in this season. And it starts out with the Saikai Taikai. And I think for Johnny, this episode is a lot about the Saikai Taikai and the whole Kreese storyline. Right away, we see Kreese approach Johnny, and he's admit everything he's done wrong. And Kreese was always on the fence about this. I think deep down, he knew what he did was wrong, but he defended it in his mind, or maybe he always felt this way, but he could never truly say it to Johnny. Because we did see him in season 5 breaking down to a vision of young Johnny about how he taught him wrong and crying, so clearly it hurt him. But this is the first time he said it to Johnny, and the first time Johnny really understood these emotions he was going through. And Johnny seems very confused by this because their relationship, the love and the hate, was built up for over 30 years. And he's never seen Kreese like this. So he just left it. He just leaves it like that, saying he wants to go see his. He's going to go watch his sons fight. But it clearly triggered some bad memories and maybe some good ones that all boil over around the end of the episode. Then we get to the Robbie fight, and we know how that ends with him getting his leg broken. I'll probably make a separate video about Robbie's arc because I think overall he's had the best arc in the complete show. But we see Robbie talking to Johnny and saying about it's not about what I lost, it's about what I won off the mat and what karate has gotten me, my friends, my girlfriend, and my dad. I think this is a truly beautiful moment for Robbie, but also for Johnny because it kind of shows him and a little bit what his mindset is in a couple episodes. Karate gave him so much, which is why it's so important to him, and I think it's going to show a lot more later on. And then we get the Kreese scene, and I'll say this, it is by far, to me, the greatest and best scene in the show. And William Zabka and Mark Millar's acting are so amazing. If they don't get at least Emmy nomination, I'm going to be very pissed. But the fact that Better Call Saul never even won an Emmy is enough to make me say where their smartness is when it comes to this stuff. And we see him go up to Kreese and kind of just wondering what all that was and why did he do that. And it really starts off with Johnny being bitter, saying he'll never forgive them. And Kreese says he doesn't expect forgiveness or deserve it. And this is stuff that we never saw Kreese say to Johnny. And although we've seen Kreese go through this redemption with the whole show, and us as an audience know this, Johnny never did really know how Kreese and how this was affecting him. So all this is just breaking him down. And you can really see it in his eyes and his voice about just 30 years of emotions he truly never let out and kind of been building up, just exploding. He says that night where Kreese called him a loser and choked him out was the worst night of his life. Because you have to remember, before Kreese, Johnny was a shy kid who was kind of bullied by his rich stepdad. And when he got into karate, Kreese was almost like a father figure to him. Yes, the teachings were wrong and how he taught him were wrong, but I think Kreese was teaching what he thought was right. And when Johnny lost, he gave respect to Daniel, but it clearly affected him. Before this, his whole life was confidence. His girlfriend, his friends, everything was built around karate, and that one kick just took it all away. And he lost it all. But worse than that, Kreese said to him that night was, "You're a loser." And almost choked him to death and could have killed him. And then the worst thing about that is he left him. Never went to him, never talked to him. As Johnny says, "You left me when I needed you the most. You don't know what those years were like. I trusted no one." Just imagine this. Your whole trust system as a kid revolves around one guy, and he leaves you, never talks to you again when you need him the most. He calls you a loser, almost kills you. Imagine spending your 20s and 30s never trusting anyone, never giving someone your full heart, showing your true emotions, and how that affects you. And we clearly saw how it did. And then here he is, who got back to karate and redeemed himself. He has a wife, he has a kid, he has his sons, and here he is, and he still hurts him. As he breaks down and even looks into into Kreese, with tears in his eyes, almost looking like a little kid again, with Kreese hugging him. And in his heart, I do think Johnny did forgive him, because Kreese was taught wrong things. He did bad things, went through pain, and now he is redeeming himself, just like Johnny. Johnny was taught wrong things, did bad things, felt pain, and now redeemed himself. The issue is Johnny never felt or known that this actually affected Kreese. And he gives Johnny one last thing, karate. Now with Miyagi-Do out, Johnny rejoins Cobra Kai, with him bowing to Kreese and writing that and ending off that whole thing as if the last time they see each other, as Johnny's back into Cobra Kai, where he belongs, where he started, and here to show the world what his karate and what the Cobra Kai was supposed to be. Now on to episode 14, and we see Johnny back in the dojo where it all started, and we even get this scene with Miguel where it's just like season 1, same spot, same everything. They're talking about memories and the past. It's literally the exact same scene. But in season 1, we saw Johnny defending and making excuses for what he did. Now, 5 seasons later, we see the same spot, but we see him admitting his wrongs, saying he was in the wrong, and saying how he did do wrong stuff, and saying you need to redeem yourself. This shows not just visually, but audibly. It shows everything. It shows growth. It's not growth just through dialogue or something that a crazy guy like me has to make an arc video about. It shows right there that it's the same shot, but it's a completely different dialogue, and that shows he truly did change. Now after that, we get the fight of Tori, and we get the fight of Miguel, and we see Johnny being a great sensei, and those fights were great, some of the best in the show. But this episode wasn't really about him. It was really about Miguel and Tori. But the last episode of the series absolutely was, as episode 14 ends with Johnny and Wolf. They'll be fighting, and the sensei, whoever wins that, will win and take away the entire Saikai Kai. They win the entire Saikai Kai. So, on to episode 15. First off, it's a perfect title, Ex-Generate, as the first episode in the show was Ace Degenerate, as he really was a degenerate, and he was a loser. As we see in the beginning of the show, as it shows a flashback of Johnny looking awful and drunk, and visiting his mother's grave and breaking down. and admitting he is a loser, admitting he is just a bad person, and that you don't get second chances in life. Which is just not true, but it shows what Johnny was feeling at the time. And then it cuts to him now, with his daughter with the same name as his mother, and we really see how far Johnny has come. But at the same time, we see how close he still feels to that past self. Because losing this fight is a big part of this and how he feels in this episode. Because when he lost back in '84, it ruined his life. And now losing on the biggest stage and being the reason the dojo loses, I mean, it would kill him and eat him up inside. And we see that in his training and how he's going out about this, that he's trying to be more aggressive and more aggressive. Until Daniel just says, you gotta step back and relax, but he doesn't want to hear that. And then Daniel says, he brings up Rocky 1. When Rocky 1, he didn't win. He went the distance. He fought, and he shouldn't even been in that fight. He was a far less advantaged fighter, same as Wolf is a far advantaged fighter than Johnny. But he fought the distance. Everyone felt like he won, and he left that ring with what mattered most. What happens after. His family, his girlfriend, his kids. That's what matters to Johnny. And this helps Johnny and makes him feel a certain way, and I think he does believe that. But it's still something that lingers in him about what a loss means. But this whole belief system falls down when Wolf confronts him inside the locker room. And he strikes the fear of God in him as he brings up how big this loss will be and how pathetic he'll feel, of how they'll make fun of his daughter and he'll be a loser forever. And this completely breaks Johnny down. And for the first time, we see Johnny going into a fight with fear. As he gets in the fight, he's completely unbalanced, losing points after points and going down and going down. And then the reality just starts to kick in for Johnny of who he is and what he'll be known for the rest of his life. A loser. Until Daniel calls out a timeout. He tells Johnny exactly what he needs to hear. He doesn't give him some emotional speech. Johnny's emotions is what is inside of him. What he's fighting for already is in him. What he needs is what makes Johnny a fighter.
So stop acting like a little pussy and get out there and kick the living shit out of this asshole.
Yes, Sensei.
Letting go of all the fear of losing, of winning, all of it. And he starts to make up the points until it's a 1-point game. Whoever gets next point, win. They line up. Johnny steps forward, just like in the Karate Kid. Then he looks back at Daniel. With all the flashbacks going back in his head, he takes a step back. For the first time, Johnny humbles himself as a fighter. Because he could have stepped forward, could have given it his best and lost and said, hey, I'm just like Rocky 1. I did my best, I went the distance. But Johnny, he is not Rocky. He is Johnny fucking Lawrence. All this pain he's gone through, the guilt, the redemption, everything on his mind, the past, the future, present, he steps back, let go of all of it, letting him go first, letting him strike first. And when he does it. He wins for himself, for his legacy, for his family. Johnny wins. He is a winner. An ex-degenerate. Now, did Johnny need this? No. Everything he's been through, everything he let go to get here, made him earn it. Because Johnny is a winner. And now the show ends with him back as a sensei, where he belongs. As he's teaching the right Cobra Kai, allowing them to learn other styles, and most importantly, still being Johnny Lawrence. As he smiles in the cameras one last time, and the show ends, fades to black. That right there was pitch perfect for Johnny Lawrence. And this is what I mean of a redemption of his arc. They completely did a 360 on his arc. And yes, they kind of shipped through places to get here, but they got here either way, and I gotta appreciate that and give them all the credit. So there it is. There's my video on Johnny Lawrence, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I really loved it from part 3, and guys, I will have some more videos to come. And guys, I will be having videos about other stuff, other movies, other shows coming soon, as that's probably gonna be the future of my channel. Kind of videos like this in this format, talking about arcs and characters, but all fictional characters, not just Cobra Kai. So if you guys have any shows, movies you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below. I'll see you guys next time. I still have a Sam video on the way too. Look out for that. And always remember, extreme choices require extreme measures. Peace.